Lesson 7.4, Video 3. Now, this question is not much different. There's lots of hints here, but it's a question style we've already done. And I'm going to start right away with it to see if we notice what we're talking about here. Alright, so we're looking for two terms that have a product of 3 times 20. So we're looking for a product of 60 and a sum of negative 17. So we look for factors of 60, 60 and 1, times 1, 30 times 2, 20 times 3. Well, that looks promising because they have a difference of 17, but notice that I have to have a positive 60, so I can either say 20 times 3, which gives us a sum of 23, if I add them, or I have to have a negative 20 and a negative 3 and have a sum of negative 23. So they both have to be either positive or they both have to be negative in order to get a product of 60. So that doesn't work. 15 times 4, 10 times 6, and then 12 and 5. Now 12 and 5 add up to 17, but you have to have a negative 17. So we're going to make both of them negative. Again, multiplied together you still get positive 60, but we need a negative 17 in the equation, so that's what we'll do. So this gives us 3x squared minus 12x minus 5x plus 20. So we group those together, and again, just to remind you, those two terms replaced the middle negative 17x. So these first two terms have a 3x in common, so we get an x minus 4. The next two have a negative 5 in common. Remember we talked about if that first term is negative, let's take that out with it. That's usually good practice. And that leaves us with x minus 4, because we factor out a negative, so the signs change. And that's good because in parentheses we have the same thing. So we can say x minus 4 in parentheses. What's left gets put in there, so we have 3x minus 5. And that's factored. Alright, so let's take a look at our next one. We're looking for, again, a product of 6 and negative 8, so negative 48, and a sum of 22. Our factors there would be 2 and 24. Now those two, now notice that we have to have a negative 48, so one of those numbers has to be negative. And we want a positive 22, so if I make that a negative 2, together it gives you a negative, or a positive 22. So we'd rewrite that as 6x squared. We'd say minus 2x plus 24x minus 8. Now a reminder, be very conscious of whether or not you have the proper result when you add them together. Negative 2, positive 24 gives you a positive 22. First two terms have a 2 and an x as a greatest common factor. We divide each one of those terms by 2x and we get 3x minus 1. Very important to remember, 2x divided by 2x is 1. The place is still there, we don't lose it. And then we have an 8 in common here. I'll take a plus 8 out, and we get a 3x minus 1. So they both have a 3x minus 1. And we put the two terms that are left, the two front terms, in its own binomial. Now you notice one more thing we have to take care of. If we look at this last term, they happen to have a common term we can take out, which is 2. So I'm going to put this term first for a second and write this as 2x plus 8, 3x minus 1, and we're going to look at this piece and say I'm going to take a 2 out. If I take a 2 out, I will get 2x plus 4 and then 3x minus 1. So I could actually go one step further than I have in all the other questions, and this would now be considered factored. And sometimes you can I could have done that earlier. If you notice, all these have they're all divisible by 2. I could have done that earlier, which might have made this part a little bit easier. And I'm going to do that in the next one on the next video. And this ends Lesson 7.4, Video 3.